Bello.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps the Prime Minister knows something I don't know. There's only one hospital.
A secret plan to quietly bring Britain closer to the European Union has just exploded right in front of the nation's eyes. And the one holding the match? Keir Starmer. But before he could take the next step, the Supreme Court stepped in and tore it apart. The courtroom decision came like a thunderclap, shaking the foundations of Labour's future and setting off a political storm across Britain. What was hidden is now exposed. And the country is reacting fast and loud, in a move that no one saw coming this soon. The Supreme Court of the United Kingdom has officially blocked what legal experts are calling a covert re-entry strategy, aimed at gradually pulling Britain back toward the European Union. This was not just a routine legal case, it was a showdown between the rule of law and political ambition. The judgment, handed down just moments ago, ruled that the strategy pushed quietly behind closed doors by Labour leadership violated core principles of parliamentary sovereignty and transparency. The court declared that no party, even if currently out of government, can negotiate or promise foreign policy shifts, especially something as major as re-engaging with EU structures, without proper legislative debate and national consultation. The judges made it clear, Labour's secret backdoor dealings did not have the authority of the people or the parliament behind them. The language used in the ruling was blunt and final. Words like unconstitutional, unauthorized, and undemocratic were repeated throughout the 60-page decision. Behind this case was a report that surfaced just weeks ago, a paper drafted under Labour advisors and think tank affiliates that outlined potential policy shifts to bring Britain into alignment with EU environmental, labour, and trade standards. This was reportedly meant to be done through executive agreements, non-binding treaties, and cooperation mechanisms that would bypass the need for a full referendum or open parliamentary vote. Critics said this was a betrayal of Brexit. Supporters of the ruling are calling it a guardrail to protect national sovereignty. The timing couldn't be more important either. Just months before the next general election, the court also highlighted that Starmer's office had been advised internally that such an approach might be seen as overreach. But rather than press pause, sources claim the plan moved forward quietly. That decision may now come back to haunt him. The Prime Minister's office has not officially responded to the ruling yet, but insider leaks suggest they view this as proof that Labour is not ready to lead and willing to sneak around voters. Conservative MPs have already started flooding social media with statements like "democracy wins today" and "Brexit has been defended by the courts." Meanwhile, Starmer's camp is reportedly in emergency meetings, deciding whether to appeal or shift the party's platform entirely. Legal appeals in this kind of ruling are rare, especially when the verdict is delivered unanimously, as it was today. Every judge agreed that the plan went too far, and that's what makes this even more damaging. The shock of this ruling is not just about the legal defeat, it's about the story it now tells the public. A major political figure was caught working behind the scenes to change the course of Britain's future, without saying a word to the British people. Now, the highest court has spoken, and the entire country is listening. While Keir Starmer has publicly walked a careful line on Brexit, often saying he would make it work and move on from past divisions, behind the scenes, a very different picture was forming. According to leaked internal documents, private meetings, and think tank collaborations, Labour insiders were drafting a long-term plan to quietly reconnect Britain with the European Union, step by step, without ever calling it rejoining. This strategy was never meant to be seen by the public, not yet, at least. The documents, first leaked to an investigative political blog 2 weeks ago, revealed a coordinated effort between senior Labour policy heads and former EU legal consultants. Together, they had outlined a path that would not require a referendum or even a full parliamentary vote. Instead, it relied on a soft return tactics, things like economic partnership agreements, joint regulatory bodies, and climate pacts that would slowly align Britain's laws and standards back with the EU, effectively placing the UK under Brussels' influence again. Without formally being a member, this was being framed, internally, as a reset strategy, and it had several steps: rejoin EU research and science programs, which had already started publicly. Agree to mutual recognition of trade standards, making UK businesses comply with EU rules. Restore freedom of movement for specific sectors, such as youth work and professional services. Create joint judicial cooperation platforms with EU courts, especially in civil and migration law. Finally, reopen the possibility of a customs union, but under a new name. At each phase, the public was to be reassured that these were simple partnerships or cooperation agreements. But the leaked memos were clear about the long-term goal, to make rejoining seem like the natural next step in the future. What makes this explosive is not just the content, but the secrecy. The plan had reportedly been developed under the radar for over a year, and when questioned by journalists about Labour's EU position, Starmer repeatedly deflected, claiming he would not reverse Brexit. According to insiders, the strategy wasn't just Starmer's idea. Several key figures in his shadow cabinet, people with past connections to pro-EU campaigns, had been involved. Even former EU officials are said to have attended private events to advise Labour on the legal structures that could allow such steps, but what finally triggered public exposure was a whistleblower, a mid-level staffer who believed that the public deserved to know. The documents they leaked included meeting summaries, draft policy memos, and a suggested timeline. One shocking line from the document read: Phase 1 must be complete before next election, Phase 2 quietly introduced post-victory. The moment this hit the press, everything changed. Conservative MPs jumped on it instantly. Brexit campaigners labeled it a betrayal in progress. And public anger began to bubble on social media. But it wasn't until legal experts stepped in that the full gravity became clear. One group of constitutional lawyers filed a petition to the Supreme Court, demanding a review of whether such international realignment efforts could be pursued by a party without being in power, and without informing Parliament. This was not just a matter of politics, they argued, but of law and accountability, and today, as we saw, the Supreme Court agreed. So now the truth is out, behind closed doors. A plan was being crafted to slowly erase Brexit, but without ever calling it that. Keir Starmer's team may have believed they were doing what was best for Britain. But by avoiding open debate, they've now found themselves in the center of a storm, legal, political, and deeply public. Next, we'll look at how the British public and political class have exploded in reaction, from protests to furious headlines, to what this means for Starmer's chances in the next election. The moment the Supreme Court decision was made public, the reaction was swift and explosive. Within minutes, #Starmer exposed, #Brexit betrayal, and #EU backdoor deal were trending across social media. What began as quiet whispers about Labour's EU intentions has now turned into a national debate, loud, divided, and angry. For millions of Britons who supported Brexit, this felt like a direct attack on their democratic choice. And for others who hoped to one day see the UK back in the EU, the ruling crushed any quiet optimism that something was already in motion. Across London, small crowds began to gather outside Parliament and Labour Party offices. Some waved Union Jacks, chanting slogans like, "We voted out," and "Hands off Brexit." Others carried signs accusing Keir Starmer of betrayal and dishonesty. One protester told reporters, "We thought he was silent because he respected the vote, but he was silent because he was hiding something." In working-class towns across the Midlands and the North, areas that heavily supported Brexit in 2016, local radio shows and call-in programs were flooded with angry callers. Many said they felt lied to again and accused Labour of pretending to respect Brexit while planning to undo it slowly. One caller summed up the mood: "If he lies about this, what else is he hiding?" But it wasn't just the public reacting. Inside Westminster, the ruling caused an immediate political earthquake. The Prime Minister's spokesperson released a carefully worded but clear statement: "The courts have spoken." Secret international strategies have no place in British democracy. The people's vote must be respected. Tory MPs, especially those aligned with the Brexit wing, were far less subtle. Jacob Rees-Mogg tweeted, "The Supreme Court has defended Britain. Labour tried to sneak us back into the EU. They failed." Nigel Farage released a short video saying, "This proves what I've warned about all along: Labour never respected Brexit. They still don't." Even Reform UK, a smaller party but growing in support, used the ruling to blast both Labour and the Conservatives. Their statement read, "Labour plotted in secret, and the Tories let them get away with it, until the courts stepped in." Within the Labour Party, the atmosphere was reported to be tense and divided. Some shadow cabinet members are said to be furious, not just at the legal defeat, but at how it was allowed to happen under their noses. A few MPs are now reportedly pressuring Starmer to issue a full public apology and abandon any EU realignment efforts altogether. But Starmer hasn't spoken yet. His press team issued only a short comment, calling the ruling disappointing and insisting that Labour remains committed to partnerships that benefit the UK. That wasn't enough. Even normally friendly media outlets are demanding clarity. One major headline read, "Starmer must come clean, was this a plan or a plot?" Meanwhile, political analysts are already asking whether this is the moment that changes the course of the next general election. Starmer had positioned himself as a safe, stable leader, someone who would avoid drama and chaos. But now, that image has been shattered. The worded trust is being questioned in every news segment, and not just by political rivals, but by ordinary people who feel caught in another storm of political games, and the anger isn't only among voters who backed Brexit. Even pro-EU voters have mixed feelings. Many feel disappointed that such a plan was not openly discussed, fearing that the secrecy will now set back any hopes of restoring EU ties for years. Some say the court ruling has turned a complex issue into a battlefield again, just when the country needed healing. One political columnist summed it up best, "It's not just about Brexit anymore. It's about trust, truth, and whether politicians still believe in telling the people what they're really planning." The streets are buzzing, the headlines are blazing, and Starmer's silence is only making the fire spread. The Supreme Court's ruling didn't just destroy a hidden EU plan, it may have also rewritten the story of Labour's future. Next, we'll uncover what this means for Keir Starmer's leadership, the upcoming elections, and how this crisis could either break him or force a dangerous political transformation. Keir Starmer is now standing on the edge of the biggest political crisis of his career. Just days ago, he was the clear frontrunner to become Britain's next Prime Minister. Now, after the Supreme Court's ruling, his leadership is under fire, not just from the Conservatives, not just from Brexit supporters, but from inside his own party. The question echoing through Westminster today is no longer, when will Labour take power? It's, will Starmer even survive this storm? Political insiders are describing Labour headquarters as shaken and disoriented. Senior staff were reportedly caught off guard by the court's swift and unanimous decision. And the fallout has been worse than they imagined. While Labour expected criticism from the right, they hadn't prepared for this level of public outrage. Some of Starmer's own MPs are now worried that he's damaged the party's credibility heading into the general election. One backbencher was quoted saying, "We spent years fixing our image, and now this." The timing is deadly. The bigger issue isn't just the court ruling. It's the trust factor. Starmer had carefully built a reputation as a serious, steady hand, a leader who could be trusted after years of political chaos. That image is now cracked. And in politics, when trust breaks, the damage spreads fast. Already, recent polls, some taken within 24 hours of the ruling, show a sharp dip in public trust toward Labour leadership. Voters are asking, if he hid this from us, what else is coming? Labour strategists now face a difficult choice. Do they admit the plan existed and try to explain it? Or do they deny involvement and risk being accused of lying further? Either option is risky, and both could cost Starmer key voter groups. At the same time, Starmer's silence is becoming more damaging than any statement could be. In a moment of national controversy, the country expects its leaders to speak up clearly. But so far, Starmer has stayed mostly silent, offering only vague comments through his press office. Critics say this silence looks like guilt. Supporters say he's buying time. But every minute without a strong response gives his opponents more ammunition. Some political advisors are now pushing for Starmer to give a nationwide televised address, something to explain, clarify, and take control of the story before it fully spirals out of reach. Others believe it's already too late, that he needs to clean house, fire policy staff involved in the EU plan, and publicly commit to no future alignment deals without full public debate, but even if he does that, there's a deeper problem. The trust that Starmer worked so hard to build with working-class voters, especially in former red wall areas, has taken a major hit. These are the same voters who switched to the Conservatives in 2019 over Brexit. Many were starting to come back to Labour. Now, they feel betrayed again. And that feeling can last far longer than any press release. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak's team is using this moment to rebuild the Conservative Party's strength. Though they've faced criticism over inflation, immigration, and economic uncertainty, the Supreme Court ruling has given them a gift, a powerful narrative that Labour can't be trusted with Brexit. And they are wasting no time pushing it in Parliament. The Prime Minister may soon call for an emergency session or public debate on foreign policy transparency, directly aimed at trapping Starmer into either defending the strategy or denying it under pressure. It's a clever political move that puts Labour in a no-win situation. So, where does this leave Keir Starmer? Right now, he has two paths ahead: collapse, if he continues to stay silent, avoids direct answers, or blames others. The public may see him as weak, dishonest, or manipulative. That could lead to a massive loss of support and internal calls for new leadership. Reinvention, if he takes control now, owns the mistake, apologizes clearly, and shows leadership in crisis, he may be able to survive and even turn the situation to his advantage as proof of learning and listening. But time is running out. The court's ruling destroyed the secret plan, but whether it also destroys Starmer's political future will depend entirely on what he does next. This story isn't just about a court decision. It's about the battle for Britain's soul, about honesty in politics, the legacy of Brexit, and the question every voter is now asking: who really speaks for us?